Hi, everyone. This is Alex Bradley with Lucidworks. Thanks for joining today's webinar, Tightly Aligned Digital Experience Strategy and Technology Investments to Fuel Profitable Growth. Before we start, I want to go over some housekeeping. We'd love to hear from you, so if you have any questions, just enter them in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. Also, today's session will be recorded and sent to you afterward. Today's presenters are Joe Sickman, Senior Analyst at Forrester, and Peter Curran, General Manager of Digital Commerce at Lucidworks. Joe is part of the digital transformation team at Forrester, where he helps commerce organizations and technical teams drive online channels, support digitally enabled selling, and pursue new direct-to-consumer initiatives. Peter is an expert in e-commerce. For 25 years, he has worked on just about every e-commerce business model, category, and company size. Now, I'll pass it over to Joe to kick off today's presentation. Take it away, Joe.
Thanks, Alex, and hi, everyone. I hope you and your families are staying safe and comfortable. And thanks for taking time today to hear about how to tightly align your DX strategy and technology investments to fuel profitable growth. Being great at digital experience matters because you're being measured not just against your competition, but also against every other digital experience that your customers or prospects encounter. And in 2020, they were having a lot of digital experiences. The industry went through 10 years worth of e-commerce growth in just the first 3 months of the pandemic. You're looking at more consumers as well as business buyers turning to e-commerce and experiencing just how good or bad brands are at delivering on digital. And this is fueling or refueling the digital experience imperative. It used to be the case that software development was a cost center, and tech teams were something that companies had to manage with efficiency in mind. But now we live in a digital world, and in a digital world, experiences and the technologies behind them are a source of business value. And even as the pandemic subsides, companies continue to work behind the scenes to use digital to make themselves more resilient. The pandemic response that boosted digital investments favored comprehensive cloud strategies. Our COVID-19 service provider pulse survey from April of last year predicted that no enterprise or service provider will come out of the pandemic recession unscathed or unchanged. And those service providers' collective point of view and ours is that business and technology priorities in every industry will shift. Digital capabilities are no longer optional. They're the only path forward. The journey to cloud will accelerate, and some projects may pause, but ultimately have to resume. Many customer experience pros find it hard to prove the business impact of improving CX. So to help, Forrester built industry-specific models that show how CX improvements drive growth through increasing customer loyalty. See, the business impact of improving CX varies by industry. Our models consider those industry-specific dynamics like barriers to switching and recommendation effectiveness. So to sharpen your case for investment, find your firm's pattern of CX to growth. For example, if your firm's return on CX is diminishing, you may want to focus on improving poor experiences. But if many of your customers are having good experiences, your firm may benefit most from improving those already good experiences until they're excellent. Why? Because these improvements will affect a large group of customers who could be even more loyal, driving total gain upwards. Great CX isn't something businesses can just buy and then plug in. Delivering great digital experiences to customers requires your company to think digital and to be digital down to the core. So how do you contribute to that change? Well, you make change happen with change agents and communication. See, one of the reasons that change management efforts struggle and often fail is that they don't directly address employees' individual concerns. To achieve success, your change effort must include 6 things, one of which we'll explore now. And that is to use change champions to promote DX agendas at a grassroots level. So use pro-change employees in different lines of businesses to act as the local eyes and ears of the change management leader. These change agents should raise issues and communicate the staff's reaction back to the change management leader. They help coworkers understand the change and get their support and buy-in. And these change agents within a DX delivery organization should be able to and empowered to discuss issues and best practices with change agents in other departments. Among other things, the change agents break down the silos that impede the emergence of systems with true sense and adapt capabilities. When you rationalize the DX architecture and have the components all contributing signals to and taking readings from the same data and analytics, they're working in harmony. And that gives you more reliable and consistent automation. It's at that point that AI can fill operational gaps with a sense and adapt paradigm of automation. AI allows organizations to harness their newfound data assets to automate experiences. And great omnichannel experiences can't come from siloed or channel-specific initiatives. So use Forrester's digital experience reference architecture to harmonize your technology investments across today's functional silos. Use it to align teams around common terminology. Marketing and technology stakeholders have an opportunity to collaborate while repurposing content, getting data assets together, and even reducing SaaS sprawl. This investment we're talking about is aimed at profitable business growth. So now let's take a look at the mechanics of that growth. You're looking at the formula behind Forrester's CX index. Using this model, we can estimate the total business impact for a firm that improves its CX index score by 1 point. It quantifies the business benefit of having the loyal customer. It calculates the potential revenue from improved retention, enrichment, and advocacy loyalty. So again, getting customer experience right leads to loyalty, which is retention, enrichment, and advocacy. And that drives business growth. A rationalized architecture that harmonizes your technology investments enables you to sense and respond at scale and sets you up to be able to deliver great digital customer experiences across the entire customer lifecycle. And again, the business impact of great customer experience is profitable growth. Define your strategy by charting the digital interactions on a customer journey map. Then examine the business impact of each moment. Growth is good. Profitable growth is better. Loyalty and keeping customers engaged during and after a pandemic is priceless. Digital experiences help with all these goals. Our research on how great CX improves revenue and pricing power shows that 1, better digital customer experiences go hand in hand with faster revenue growth. 2, digital experiences also help drive profitable growth. And 3, in a down economy, great digital experiences can boost loyalty as well. To link your business strategy to your technology roadmap, you need to focus on the business impact of specific digital interactions. And this will align teams by clearly communicating the why behind the roadmap. This is how app development pros can support the broader DX team's assessment of which digital interactions and technology investments will generate the most business value. It builds on your strategy and it feeds downstream execution. In a recent Forrester wave of global digital experience agencies, we spoke to 48 customer references. And at that time, almost 1/4 of those references were transforming their companies from end to end, from experiences through to operations. These experience-led transformations gave them the power and budget to move their enterprises forward, to reinvent themselves, to fulfill the promise and the opportunity of digital business. And one of those 4 lessons in experience-led transformation is to scale initiatives that deliver customer benefit and business value. So anything you do has to benefit customers as well as drive profitable growth for you. Otherwise, customers can simply choose to ignore it, especially on the phones. In interviews with hundreds of Forrester clients, we've heard the words business case and ROI thrown around as code words for help me convince my company that we should spend the money. But for most companies, digital experience investments aren't really an option. They're a strategy to serve customers where they are. It's your job to assess the technologies that your company needs to reach customers along every step of their journey. Customers need and deserve service from discovery through purchase, from onboarding through to service and loyalty. And it's also your job to assess the technologies that your companies need to give practitioners the tools to manage experiences. The modern DX platforms give much better tools to help content authors and merchandisers, marketers, and other practitioners manage digital experiences. Practitioner self-service means fresher content and better experiences that drive growth. So let's get more specific about what you need to do. So your customer journey map arms you with specifics on each digital interaction so you can evaluate and prioritize your technology investments. So it says each digital interaction against two factors. The first factor is the benefit to your customers. So if customers don't immediately benefit from a web or mobile interaction, they'll avoid it or move on to some other activity. And while this has always been true of the web, it's critical with mobile. So use a simple statement of purpose to prioritize interactions that empower and reward customers. And the second factor is value to your company. So over the long haul, your company will invest only in digital interactions that reliably generate money, improve loyalty, or solve service problems. For example, one hotel company directs investments in mobile moments based on success in room nights booked. Then, for each of the digital, run them through both quizzes, the benefit to the customer and value to your business. And score them on a scale of 1 to 5. Then plot them on this 2x2 matrix. That should be your top priority. Then identify the technology you need for each digital interaction. So for example, do you already have the capability and you aren't using it today? Or is it an extension to your existing platform? When delivering digital customer experiences, 34% of digital executives at enterprises report organization structure as the top barrier to success. And breaking down these barriers requires a top-down, holistic mindset to build, manage, and optimize digital experiences across touchpoints based on the context of a customer's journey. So to deliver on this promise, you need to assess your gaps and grow your digital experience delivery expertise. Forrester's assessment aims to measure the overall digital delivery maturity of organizations, and that's what we're going to talk about next. But first, a reminder. So Forrester distills a digital experience down to 4 solutions. Starting there at the top, understanding the customer with data, creating the experience with content, tailoring that experience to fit the context with marketing, and finally, delivering value with commerce. And compared to siloed solutions, modern unified DX platforms have better tools to help content authors, merchandisers, marketers, and other practitioners manage digital experiences. Excellence in DX delivery requires competency in 6 areas: structure, strategy, governance, process, technology, and culture. And you should rate your maturity on each of these dimensions. So I'm going to talk about 2 of them today. Strategy. So while inherently linked to technology, these strategies will define how your organization establishes core services that can deliver experience on any channel and how it can measure the effects to better improve relevance and efficiency over time. And technology. So shape your DX technology investments by 4 priorities: an API-first stack, cloud-first deployment, practitioner self-service, and automation. These technology principles will ensure that you have the flexible and robust foundation, but don't forget that non-technical practitioners need to drive their own workflows and accelerate experience processes. So zooming in on that first competency, digital experience strategy comprises 5 key areas: omnichannel experience, metrics, customer data and insights, content strategy, and digital transactions. Again, these strategies will define how your organization establishes core services that can deliver and measure experiences on any channel. Okay, so the first 2 assessment questions. So rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And when you answer these, answer with regard to your organization's current state. So zooming into that first one, your DX strategy should support a broad set of channels, touch points, and experiences like web, mobile, email, social, or chat. And that's because your customers are in charge of how they interact with you. In retail, digitizing a store can encompass several offerings. So you need to consider the benefits of each tactic separately and match each capability to a tier based on its importance to the organization. To uncover the full breadth of opportunity, including new revenue streams, you need to ask yourself various questions. So can we increase customer spending through new in-store digital touchpoints? Or can we offer digital solutions to help sell to customers when associates are unavailable? And can digital engagement improve customer lifetime spending? So zooming into that second assessment question, your DX strategy should support collecting, connecting, and integrating customer data while complying with appropriate customer data privacy regulations. So take, for example, how early adopters of B2B CDPs are solving key data challenges. B2B marketers are caught in a data squeeze. Data fuels the modern marketing engine, but only 12% of B2B marketers have high confidence in the accuracy of their data, and 84% say that data management is one of their top 5 weaknesses. B2B CDPs typically consist of a database that functions as a prepackaged data lake, advanced data integration, and management capabilities to build unified customer profiles. Our research shows that B2B marketers are using these capabilities to overcome their data challenges and deliver better results by, among other things, gaining a more comprehensive and accurate view of buyer journeys. So now let's shift gears to the technology competencies. So specifically, we're going to focus on 3 of the 4 priorities that should shape your DX investments: an API-first stack, cloud-first deployment, and practitioner self-service. So the next set of 2 assessment questions. Again, rate yourself on a 1 to 5 scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and answer these with regard to your organization's current state. Let's zoom into that first question. Your DX technologies should leverage a modern architecture in order to promote speed, flexibility, reuse, and integration with legacy apps. So let's talk a bit about microservices in relation to APIs. Developers typically establish APIs, most often but not always REST or GraphQL, as a mechanism for making requests into functional microservices. So this steers many developers into using microservice and API synonymously, but teasing these 2 terms apart provides a stronger basis for designing and building each. Specifically for well-structured microservices, APIs serve as the entry points into the microservices. APIs and messaging provide connective tissues within a microservice. Microservice components are independently deployable units, and microservices can be larger, cohesive services. Now let's zoom in to that second question. Your DX technologies should provide business user tools and embedded AI features to automate operational tasks and improve efficiency of your DX practitioners' work. So you need to ignite action with insights. Your customer-facing digital products, the person who buys the product is, well, with consumer-facing digital products, the person who buys the product is usually one who uses it. But with enterprise tools, buyers may not use the product at all. And even if they do, they often focus primarily on the cost of licensing the product, and they ignore the cost of its poor UX. So make the case from 4 different angles to conquer this problem. First, personal. So show the decision makers the good, the bad, and the ugly. 2, visionary. Vividly communicate the future. 3, unified. So join forces with your company's process optimizers. And 4, economic. So model and quantify how much bad UX costs your company. So one UX and product lead at a large retailer often hears from colleagues that say that something's a bad experience for employees, or it could be improved. But of course, almost everything could be improved. So when he hears vague statements like these, he strives to refine them to include statements like, 8 out of 10 users can't complete this task. And because they can't complete this task, it's reducing sales by X amount. Sorting through all of the potential technology investments that contribute to great DX only further confound digital leaders. Prioritize investments that enable the integration of requisite components and delivery of critical customer interactions. Marketing, e-commerce, and other CX-focused professionals understandably invest in technologies aligned to their respective needs to deliver customer experiences. So marketers may focus on promotional offers and outbound email campaigns, while merchandisers separately develop product recommendations for inbound e-commerce interactions. We recommend aligning your needed investments around a unified architecture. You should consider technology components based on customer needs versus those of internal operational functions. Ever since Steve Jobs took the stage and wowed the world with the iPhone, the software market has recognized the importance of experience design. But many dev teams struggle to effectively incorporate experience design into the software development process due to organizational silos. Silos block design plus development collaboration. When operating in silos, design and development teams don't pay enough attention to each other. The siloed model doesn't yield high-quality software or pleasurable customer experiences. Instead, it drives missed expectations, rushed timelines, and poor quality software. Triad teams link design plus development. Organizational triads of product management, design, and development help teams effectively communicate customers' needs and technological feasibility to drive strategy and prioritization of the best outcomes. So the opportunity for digital experience isn't optional anymore. It's the only way forward. The result of great customer experience is profitable growth. So to seize that, focus on your maturity as a delivery organization, or more simply, build your team before you build your app. I'm Joe Sisman, Senior Analyst at Forrester Research, and now I'm going to hand it over to Peter.
Thank you, Joe. That was great. I love all the practical advice you packed in there, and want to kind of add on to your story with a story of our own around customer journeys as well as organizational journeys that are relevant to that content. As Alex said, I'm Peter Curran. I'm the general manager at Lucidworks for the digital commerce business. I'd love to continue this conversation with you, and you can get in touch with me in email, LinkedIn, or via text message. I'm going to kind of talk about the post-COVID landscape for a little bit, talk a little bit about a trend I'm seeing today, move on to some ways that we think you should organize your teams, and talk a little bit about machine learning and machine learning models in the context of our platform. So as we come out of the pandemic in the United States, touch wood, we need to think a little bit about what a return to normalcy will look like. And similar to the slide that Joe shared, this is the United States Census Bureau measurement of e-commerce sales. And you can see over the last almost decade, the growth has been a steady straight line until you get to the pandemic, when you see this rapid and many-fold over increase. And the question is, where will things go next? Companies like Lululemon, for example, have been very successful at using their online experience to offset declines in physical store operations. And I hope those of you who are on the line were able to do that too. Question is what comes next? Ernst & Young produces something called the Future Consumer Index, and has done, I think, 6 or so updates of that index since the pandemic began. And as Joe said, the old truth was that you're competing with your competitors, but today you're really competing with the last good digital interaction that your customer had. And while many people think that life will be the same after receiving the vaccine, many people, certainly believe that they will continue to shop online in ways that they began doing in the pandemic, and will continue doing that after they have the ability to go into store. Many people in America are still uncomfortable doing normal things. They don't want to go to gyms or movies, bars, concerts, things like that. They don't want to ride the bus to work. So while we are, decreasingly uncomfortable, we're still uncomfortable doing many of the things that we used to do. And so what does that mean in terms of traffic? If the pandemic's effects are going to lag past the end of restrictions and into the sort of post-pandemic world, what will happen to web traffic? If you look at a company like Macy's, for example, here is a screenshot from an SEO tool called SpyFu, showing that their traffic since the last year has been in a steady decline over the course of the pandemic, and particularly a pronounced decline since the beginning of this year. I think that this is a trend that many companies in retail are seeing, and I think there are a few different reasons why this is happening. There are the old threats, which remain the same kind of drag on traffic that they've always been. In this case, showing that Amazon and Walmart make up each nearly 10% of overall retail sales now in fiscal year 2020 or calendar year 2020. And that Amazon in particular is making up an enormous percentage of overall e-commerce sales, and that the total share of total consumer spend, all consumer spending, falling heavily to these two companies. And so the point is, one of the old threats to traffic is just the massive popularity of juggernauts like Walmart and Amazon, and there are a number of others. But there's also a new threat to traffic. Google Shopping is showing free product listings as well. More recently, talking about here in TechCrunch how they make shopping for flights and hotel listings completely free. These kinds of listings mean that the consumer is staying in the search engine and not moving out of the Google context as much into the on-site context. What this means is that you need to capitalize on the time that the consumer spends on your website and make sure that you convert them. And similarly to the previous slide, Amazon continues to play with the timing of Prime Day, which has an effect on otherwise reliable seasonal patterns that we've had in e-commerce now for the better part of 20 years. So when the consumer is on site, make sure that you personalize the experience so that you can convert them. Go back to email. Still, much traffic is driven through email. You have the opportunity anytime someone comes physically to a store to email them a receipt and make recommendations about how to complete a look or complete a project, as well as a number of other techniques that I'm going to drill into now. The LucidWorks point of view on this space is that it's very important for you to understand two things fundamentally and separately. Understand your data and understand user behavior. Once you can do those two things and combine those understandings into a better digital experience, you then must deliver at scale. If you do this by hand building all of these components, you'll find yourself on an almost endless software engineering expedition, which really isn't core to most retail or B2B businesses. What we provide is a solution that is end-to-end, allowing you to scalably apply machine learning to data ingestion, to real-time query actions, so understanding, for example, user intent, to be able to put all of that stuff together into one index where it can be analyzed and understood. Our platform is a cloud-ready platform and incorporates a lot of the latest technologies for scaling and managing. I think the things that make us really different are that we are agnostic about signals. So we can take signal data, or in other words, the exhaust from consumer behavior, for example, on a website or in a store, and we can pull that into our index and use it to model different kinds of outcomes for a consumer in, say, a web experience or in a store experience. We can do that with a variety of different machine learning models. And in fact, we allow our customers to put their own machine learning models into our platform and operationalize them at scale. So what does that mean to be able to take signals from anywhere in the user experience? Let's dig into that a little bit more. So as I said, LucidWorks listens to customer signals. We aggregate those together, learn from them, and then we can syndicate insights to any application that needs them. You might wonder, well, don't all product discovery platforms give you the ability to do that? Well, not really. Consider the idea of a return. A return is something that you may buy something online and return it in store. And so it could be the case that your e-commerce platform is ignorant of the fact that a product was returned. That might be very important to someone who's selling an alternator like O'Reilly Auto Parts, but completely irrelevant to someone who's selling a swimsuit because you can't return a swimsuit, or irrelevant to someone who, like Costco, would take the return on cornflakes, but where you don't really want to draw any kind of insight about the cornflakes based on that return. So you take this idea of return data and include it into the model in the case of an auto parts manufacturer, but maybe make that less important in the case of someone who's retailing swimsuits. The thing that Joe was talking about how you organize your business to take maximum advantage of new digital technology is talked about in some practical detail in a book that I love called Relevant Search, which was written by Doug Turnbull and put out on Manning Press. And what you will pick up as you read through that book, and I highly recommend it, is that signals, the exhaust from this digital experience, is kind of a conversation between a user and an engineer who is building that experience. I encourage you to kind of think about signals and how important they are in automating the user experience with models. So to talk a little bit about models and where people other than technical people plug in, I want to talk a little bit about Conway's law. Many of you will be familiar with it. And it just basically says that the systems that we produce for people to use reflect the organization's communication structure. So if you have a wall between your business team and your IT team where they're not talking, Conway's law sort of says that business and technical capabilities similarly won't be well integrated. And if you go back to that book, Relevant Search, you'll see that they talk about the role that people like content curators play when they work with engineers, as well as back with business users and other stakeholders and partners, and how that is a virtuous cycle with users. So the main idea is figure out how to plug in all of these different people into the process of shaping a digital experience. Some of you may be familiar with Milton Friedman. He was a Nobel Prize winner in, I think, the 1970s. And he made an observation about economics that he used an analogy to explain, which was that the billiard player makes shots as if she knows the complicated math formulas governing the game. The billiard player plays with instinct, not by doing math on a piece of paper. If we apply that same kind of idea to the business user in the context of an e-commerce site, we know that the business user has similar kinds of instincts. They understand the products and the customer. They don't have time to curate everything. So the business user is really the person, not the technical person, but the business user is the one who should be kind of coming up with the model that governs the digital experience. So let's talk about what a model might look like against two examples. I'm going to talk about a signal boosting model and what's called a vector retrieval model. In a signal boosting model, we might take something like a click, a cart event, and a purchase and assign some number of points to those in the context of a browse or a search query. This is a very simple kind of model. It was proposed by Walmart in, I believe, 2013, and is usually the starting place for most companies that want to do model-based user product ranking for users in an e-commerce website. If you have the ability to build an open model and shape that model, a business user may say, you know what, clicks, carts, and purchases don't tell me enough about the user's success. I want to know if a product was ever seen. I want to know if it was purchased at full price. I want to know if the product was ever reviewed by a purchaser. I want to know if it was returned. And so a business user can think of more ways to complicate the model so that we can be more precise about which products we put in front of a consumer to give them a more personalized and more dynamic user experience. Similarly, we might have a concept of a vector retrieval model. In this model, we may want to solve for a problem of showing no results. So we would say that in the context of a no results query, I then want to follow that user after they get null results and see what product they add to cart next. If I aggregate all of the users who got that null experience and all of the products that they added to cart afterward, I might be able to find some kind of correlation between the word that they searched for and the products that they're putting in cart. And by doing that, offer alternatives when I would otherwise show a null result. So the point is that models are not just for technical people. It's for business people to propose a business hypothesis that then a technical person turns into a model. And here I've given you a few examples of kind of different roles and horizons and the things that that those people would do in a properly functioning digital company. Let's talk a little bit about experimentation. Here's an example of a bad experience. This is dead air. There's nothing on the slide. Probably one of the producers right now is wondering what's going on. This is a general truth in e-commerce. Showing nothing is bad because people can't buy what they can't find. So if you think then about the grocery experience, I don't know if your experience is like this, but I'm often asked by a clerk, did you find everything that you were looking for today when I'm at the grocery? And I always answer yes. I found everything that was on my list and about 10 other things. And that's because as I shop in a grocery, I see a lot of related products when I'm there to buy something. So if I'm here to get ginger ale, I might see the Canada Dry ginger ale there, but I'm also going to see the RC Cola and the Fanta and the Squirt. And I might think, oh, you know what? Instead of buying Canada Dry this time for my Memorial Day barbecue, I'm going to buy Squirt or RC Cola instead. And so this idea of shopping where a consumer has the ability to see more things than just the thing that they came for is something I think we want to try in the digital world. We don't need online shopping to be so different from that. The problem with making that experience is that catalog data is finite. There's just a certain number of words that are in the catalog, and there's an infinite number of ways that a consumer can ask for something. They may put Canada Dry and misspell it. They may concatenate the words, write it all as one. There are 1,000. They may just say ginger ale. There are a million different ways that they can look for things. And so, and in addition to that problem, the second problem is that what someone entered is not necessarily reflective of what their actual goal was. My goal might be to just put a soft drink on the table for Memorial Day. I may not have any specific intent around ginger ale, even though that was just the first thing that came to my mind. So given that, I have this problem of a finite amount of data in the catalog, and I want to provide that immersive experience. The usual solutions that don't work are to do things like adding data to the catalog, building in a bunch of manual curation, or just driving people towards the browse channel, which is not a good idea because browse tends to convert somewhere between 1/10 and half the rate that search does. So if you look at all the different reasons that customers might get a null search, they could come down to any of these kinds of very understandable things, like just they're looking for a product that you don't carry, or they're using completely different vocabulary. LucidWorks gives you the ability to deal with these kinds of problems that seem to be impossible to solve, and a new way of solving them that does not involve any of those failed options like curation. So we can take literal and lexical queries where we're looking for keyword matches, and we can pair that with semantic query understanding and semantic search in order to bring back alternative products. Let's look at what that might look like. Before we do that, it's true that across most e-commerce sites, there is a distribution of frequency and queries that looks something like the graph that you're seeing here, where there's a head, a relatively small number of queries that happen a lot, and then this long tail of a very diverse set, millions of different unique queries that each individually don't happen very much, but in total happen a lot, as much as 60 or even 80% of your overall query volume. Vector search, semantic vector search, which we have at LucidWorks, is good for all of that stuff on the right, not just the lexical search, the traditional lexical search, which of course we also have, which is more effective for the queries on the left. Our semantic search is a little bit different than what some other vendors talk about. We have the ability to use deep learning to embed concepts into a multidimensional graph, and then use math to pull products out of that graph. So that might look like a search for a brand on Sephora. Here I've searched for Davines, which is a shampoo that I like. They don't happen to have that shampoo. And so as a result, I'm getting these lipsticks and other things that are not shampoo and not at all relevant. I might use a language like with Starbucks, where I'm using Italian, maybe I'm, for doppio, espresso macchiato, I'm spelling it wrong and they're showing me completely irrelevant products. These kinds of things are very common causes of null results. Here, I've spelled a very well-known designer, Karl Lagerfeld, I don't know if I'm saying it right, spelling his name wrong on Neiman Marcus, and I can try a couple different variations, come back with no results, until I finally spell it the right way and I actually get the products. These are the kinds of mistakes that consumers make, and these are the things that create that long tail of search diversity. So what is an example of a place where a company has solved that? Consider Netflix. So here I've gone to Rotten Tomatoes. I've sorted all of their horror movies, because I like horror, from the highest tomato meter score to the lowest. And I can see their top-rated movie is called Bone Tomahawk. And in the case of Amazon Prime Video, they have that movie. So if I search for Bone Tomahawk, there it is. They come back with it. But look at what Netflix does. Netflix does not have the movie, but they recognize that I'm searching for a title, and they know what that title is. And now they're showing me alternatives that are in the same vein as that Bone Tomahawk movie. They're showing me other movies with Kirk Douglas, other things that are kind of bloody westerns that are sort of a horror. And so they're able to give me relevant results. What if we could do that for a store? Here's an example like Costco, where I'm searching for athleisure. They come back and say, hey, we weren't able to find a match. But then notice that although they don't use that word athleisure, they're showing me athleisure type products, leggings and things along those lines. Another example, I search for Pampers diapers. Costco apparently doesn't carry Pampers diapers. And they say, hey, we weren't able to find a match. Here are some other things that may work for you. And they're completely relevant. They're showing Huggies and Kirkland Signature diapers. This is the kind of experience that the consumer gets when they're physically in the store. They go to the place where the diapers are. They're intent on finding Pampers. They don't see that brand, but they do see other related brands and are able to make a purchase that meets their goal of, in this case, buying diapers. Here's another example, nitrile gloves, something that would come in and out of stock during the pandemic, and therefore would come in and out of catalog vocabulary. They don't have it at the moment that I did this search. They come back with other kinds of latex and disposable gloves. These kinds of results these kinds of experiences are coming out of model development that's driven by business users, and is a capability that I think you can use for a much better digital experience. There are other ways that we can use this. So for example, if there's a query like this one for organic lemonade, where I have organic lemonade and I show that one product, what if I were to expand that set of results and show not just the organic lemonade, but other organic juices and drinks? This, again, is more like that grocery store shopping experience where I see not, but a variety of other products that are relevant to my goal. Why would you want to do this? Well, because it will make you more money. As Joe said, there are ways to quantify these kinds of endeavors. And many of our customers are seeing tremendous results in terms of add to cart rates at very high levels of scale. One of our customers who implemented our null results solution, which we call Never Null, saw a 91% reduction in null results and saw that those otherwise null result queries started to have conversion rates that were like their normal search queries, many times higher than their normal conversion rates. So very, very good return from these kinds of activities. Wanted to just say I used a lot of photos from Unsplash in this slide deck, and just want to give credit to the photographers. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Alex.
Well, thanks, Joe and Peter, and thanks to everyone who has entered questions so far. You all still have the chance to ask questions, so be sure to take advantage of that. For now, I'll start diving into the questions that we have received. And the first one is, what is the difference between DX and personalization? And I'll hand that one over to Joe.
Yeah, so digital experience platforms have personalization as a capability. What I'm seeing in the market right now is that there's a heck of a lot of innovation happening around modules from third-party companies. And so even though there is a capability that would fit within sort of under the umbrella of digital experience platforms, those things are also modular, and they can be plugged in. Now, personalization hits many interaction points within an experience. They could be search results, they could be content offers, they could be product offers, they could be next best action or next best experience. So I would say personalization engine, you can think of it as a product, but personalization is a characteristic of a whole bunch of interactions.
Great. Okay. Next question is, can you elaborate on how DX maturity applies in a direct-to-consumer context?
Yeah, so a lot of the principles around DX maturity, could sound very similar to great product development or great software development. And the way it applies to direct-to-consumer context because of its focus on the customer need and understanding day in the life, empathizing with the customer, and then building experiences that take friction out or delight. And so in direct-to-consumer, if brands that would go to, let's say traditionally, brands would go to market through retail partners, and the retailer would know their consumer, and retailers who were multi-brand retailers had a much broader understanding of that consumer because they were selling lots of things. But over time, brands can lose the competency to directly know their consumer. And so the idea of being digitally mature is in large part about studying being able to, in a very agile way, in a very data-driven way, study and understand and empathize with the customer and serve them directly, and continue to learn as they either as they change or as you detect ancillary markets to get into, or white space, let's say, in your product line.
Yeah, just to add on to that, many manufacturers have multiple different brands, and those different brands are going to oftentimes, service different parts of the market. Let's say those different parts of the market are distributed across age groups. Well, people age, so there's a point where you want to move that consumer interaction, maybe from one brand to another, or maybe they're just different lines of business, and you need to direct a consumer from the brand that they're engaging with here to a different brand of yours as their life changes. if you have a complete understanding of the person and all the different catalogs, and you manage that and understand it in one place, you have the ability to marshal them into a continued interaction with your company through the different brands that you operate.
Great. And we are coming up on the last question in the queue. So please, audience, submit any questions you have, and I'll tee up the final question unless we get more. Kind of similar to the last question, can you elaborate on DX in a B2B context?
Yeah, so B2B, so the way to look at the interactions you need or for B2B is to look at the buying motions of your customer. And a convenient way to break this out is in a 2x2. On the vertical axis, look at the complexity of the product, or another way to say it is the amount of knowledge your particular buyer requires for the product. And then on the horizontal axis, that's the complexity of the buying process. So like a field tech, one field tech working on a job can find one spare part and can order that one spare part. But for more complex purchases, there may be a buying committee as well. There could be a project team within the customer company to get value out of that. And when you put those on a sort of 2x2 matrix, what you find is you need a blend of self-service interactions and rep-assisted digital interactions, and then finally what we would call digitally enabled selling. And so the DX that you need is related to, if you look at your product portfolio, segment your product portfolio in those 4 quadrants, those are the digital interactions you need to match your selling motions to your customers' buying motions. And just from that kind of description, this is, much, I would say much more varied than, maybe a typical consumer apparel experience.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity in B2B. The amount of complexity often in the catalogs that the customer has, the level of sophistication that the buyer has is very fertile territory for technology like the ones that one that we produce. We do tend to talk about B2C examples because everyone's a consumer, but I think it's really true that the B2B relationship between let's say a manufacturer and a distributor or a retailer is a very intimate one. It's one where there's a lot of close business ties that are human level. So it's really important, I think, when you have that level of intimacy with a customer in a B2B relationship, it's really important that you understand them. Nothing, I used to run my own business, nothing made me more angry than having to explain to my CPA something that they helped me do a year ago. That B2B relationship is just so sensitive and so important. So I think really the opportunity to provide a personalized experience that helps the customer is in many ways much greater in B2B than it is in B2C.
Okay, we received another question. It looks like it's a Peter question, but Joe, if you have a perspective after, feel free to share it. Peter, you mentioned companies like Costco and Sephora, large enterprises. Can you talk about where your solution fits in for small business? And I'll also extend that to, the mid-market.
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of customers that are just kind of getting started on their journey with online commerce. So we have a few brands that I'm not sure I can say the names of the customers here, but several that are doing under 10 and certainly many under $50 million in online revenue. I think that the things that tend to indicate a need for a platform like ours are number one, you have a number of different products in your catalog where it's easy for someone to kind of go down the wrong wrong path. And so you want to be able to understand the language that someone is using when they look for something and take them down the right path. So in other words, if you're just selling one product or two products, something like that, probably don't need a platform like ours. But if you have, a fair number of products, or you have a small number of products and an incredible diversity of consumers, like a telco would, then these kinds of platforms are absolutely usable. And in fact, our null search solution, the one I talked about a little bit today, snaps in a SaaS modality, so very easy to set up and deploy.
Great. We have another question. We have been accelerating digital tools and experiences for B2E within our company. Can employee retention metrics be factored in as a measurement, much like the CX customer loyalty measurement framework? And before I hand that over to Peter, I'll say that we are having our customer service Activate event later this month, and another Forrester analyst, Kate Leggett, is going to be keynoting that. She's already shared some of her slides, and they look fantastic, and she's going to address a lot of that question in detail. So that's definitely a worthwhile event to attend. Peter, any commentary on BD?
I think Joe and I should both probably touch on this, since the question is touching on his framework. But I mean, the thing is that a lot of manual curation work it's crummy work, and it's not something that people want to spend their time doing, is, building in redirects and other things in the digital experience. It's much nicer to build models and have a system work in a more automated fashion. It's much more sort of intellectually engaging and meaningful work. And so, I absolutely think you can factor that stuff in. But, maybe from a internal digital experience point of view, Joe, you want to take that?
So, what we find is EX, or employee experience, affects CX, customer experience. And sure, retention metrics is just one of those. But there's a number of other metrics around employee experience that will lead ultimately to employees being able to better serve customers. So I would say absolutely, it's a nuanced, and it is a sort of nuanced endeavor, but it's absolutely worth your time to look into.
All right. Well, we don't have any more questions, so thank you, Joe and Peter, for sharing your perspectives with us today. Thank you to everyone for joining. All the content from today's webinar will be sent to you, so please feel free to share it with your colleagues. Again, if you'd like to get in touch with our team, you can send us a note at lucidworks.com/contact. Thanks again for attending. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day.